When it comes to building your own computer, it's surprisingly easy, and you get the exact benefits of what PC you want.
Get yourself a decent sized workspace and a Phillips screwdriver and you're good to go. Start by pulling the case out of the box, unscrew the side panel and pop it off so we have some room to work inside. You'll find the accessories along with the power supply. Just make sure the fan is pointed in the right direction for proper airflow. Just slide the power supply in and use the 4 provided Phillips screws to screw it into the case. Now pull out the motherboard. It will come in an anti-static bag. Pull that out and place it on top of the cardboard box it came with. It will also come with the SATA cables. Before we continue, let's take a look around the motherboard. Basically, this gray socket in the middle is where the processor is installed. To the right of that are the RAM slots for memory, and on the bottom are the PCI slots, which is where we'll be installing the graphics card a bit later on, and is also where you can install other internal components. You will find 2 of the 4 SATA ports to connect hard drives and SSDs. Most of your ports are on the back side, which will be where you plug stuff in at the rear of the case. Right beside the RAM slots are the 20 plus 4 pin connectors, which delivers the main power for the board. There's also a smaller 4 pin connector near the CPU socket which provides power for the processor. Pull the lever by the socket and you'll find the tiny gold triangle on the corner of the CPU socket. This matches the corresponding triangle on the CPU, so gently set the processor down and pull the lever to lock into place. Now take the thermal paste and apply a pea-sized amount of thermal paste onto the CPU. Now it's time to install the heatsink. Set it down square on the processor and screw in the 4 Phillips screws that are included in the heatsink. Then connect the 4-pin fan connector and connect it to the CPU power on the motherboard. I'll grab the memory, which is super easy to install. There's a peg about 2/3 down, which is what you want to line up on the slot on the motherboard. Then firmly place the RAM down onto the motherboard until it clicks into place. That's all there is. And now it's time to grab the motherboard and drop it into the brass standoffs we installed earlier. Just make sure all the ports are properly lined up with the I/O shield around the back, and grab the small screws out of the bag that came with the motherboard and screw the board into place. Starting at the corners, make sure you tighten the board down nicely into the computer case. And you should find the 4x4 CPU connector and connect it into the motherboard next to the CPU. Then grab the 20x4 pin cable and plug it into the corresponding connector on the board. While we're here, let's power on the hard drives, which has 2 connectors on the end. Grab a set from the power supply and hook it up using the larger of the 2 ports on the drive. Next, there's the SATA data cable that came with the motherboard. You'll see it has a notch on one end and it only goes in one way. Grab your screwdriver and remove the 2 PCI slots on the back of the case to make sure there's room for the graphics card. Like the motherboard, this comes in an anti-static bag, and while it isn't incredibly sensitive, you still handle it by the plastic instead of on the board. You'll find your video outputs on the rear of the PCIe connector on the bottom, which connects to the motherboard. Slide it into the top slot on the board until it clicks into place, and screw it in to keep things secure. Find the PCIe 6-pin connector and connect it into the corresponding graphics card. At this point, we're nearly done. Especially with a budget build like this, cables are not going to be the neatest thing in the world. But don't worry about that just yet. Grab the monitor, mouse, and keyboard and plug everything in. It's all good, it should come right to life when you hit the power button. If not, unplug and run through your cables and connections to make sure everything is right. If it doesn't, automatically go through the BIOS, hit delete or F2 on the keyboard to make sure everything is present and working correctly.
As long as everything looks good, you can turn your computer off and clean up what cables you can, and then you'll be able to throw any copy of whatever operating system you like. Congrats, you just built yourself a PC. If you need any more info on the parts that I use, I'll leave the details in the description. If you guys enjoyed this tutorial, definitely consider subscribing for more videos like this one. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.